Oh gosh, it's been like 25 years. Try it. All sorts of fun.
You can use the clicker to,
Okay.
well, okay. Well, we switched it to something different. Let's try it. Now you can.
There
Okay.
Okay.
Be sure to use the microphone. We're zooming
Okay.
so that only the Zoomers can hear through the microphone.
Okay. So stay
there.
put. Stay put.
Talk to this screen. Like that screen. We have so many presenters that turn around. Mike's back here, and you're seeing the same.
Okay. So just stay here.
That's it.
Okay.
That's all we're gonna see.
Yeah.
Well,
Hello.
There was a wreck on the highway, so I was like
Oh,
30
no.
minutes late.
Oh no.
Do you rest well?
Keep breathing.
Yes.
Quick 5-minute meditation.
Seriously.
All right, good morning, everyone. We're gonna get started as people trickle in. So welcome to the third annual Women in Medicine Grand Rounds hosted by the Department of Medicine. This Grand Rounds serves as a platform to bring in speakers that shine light on some of the unique experiences of women physicians, but also to the issues that resonate with all physicians that are not often discussed in mainstream academic medicine. So after this session at noon, we will be hosting a lunch as well. So you guys are welcome to come over to POB for that. It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Hingle, this year's speaker. Dr. Hingle is an internal medicine specialist and a professor of medicine who serves as Associate Dean for Human and Organizational Potential and Director of Faculty Development at Southern Illinois University School of Medicine. She earned a bachelor's degree from Miami University and a medical degree from Rush University Medical College. She completed an internal medicine residency at Georgetown University and completed the Executive Leadership in Academic Medicine program. Dr. Hingle was recently awarded the prestigious AMWA Elizabeth Blackwell Career Award. Additionally, she's received several other awards, including the Golden Apple Award, the Excellence in Teaching Outstanding Teacher Award, Excellence, the Leonard Tao Humanism in Medicine Award, the Most Influential Faculty Award, and Chair's Resilience Award. Dr. Hingle was honored with ACP's McDonald Award for Young Physicians, as well as several ACP John Tucker Evergreen Awards for chapter innovation. She's been active nationally in numerous organizations, including ACP, the Alliance of Academic Internal Medicine, AMWA, and AMA. She served as chair at the ACP Board of Regents and chair of Board of Governors. She serves on the AMWA Board of Directors and the AMA Women Physician Section Governing Council. She was senior author on the ACP policy paper on gender equity and physician compensation and career advancement. We are so honored for her to be here giving this talk today. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Hingle.
Thank you so much. This is my third trip to Chattanooga. I've been here twice for ACP meetings, and I really feel at home in Chattanooga. Springfield, where I come from, is a city of about 100,000, so a little smaller than Chattanooga, but not a big city. And in Springfield, we also have a pretty big rural reach, which I understand you all have too. So I think there's a lot of similarities. We don't have the beautiful mountains. Illinois is pretty flat, lots of corn and soybeans, but otherwise, I always feel comfortable here. Had a wonderful dinner last night, and I'm really happy and grateful to have been invited. Dr. Panda and I go way back in our careers together. So I'm going to talk to you today really about why focusing on equity is important. I think this picture is one of my all-time favorite pictures. Every year at our graduation, the medical students get to recognize 5 faculty members for various things, for teaching, for humanism, for science, really mentoring, impacting their careers. And this was a few years ago, and for the first time in SIU's 50-year history, all 5 of the faculty who were recognized were women. And not only that, very diverse women. You can see in this picture a lot of racial and ethnic diversity, a lot of age diversity. You can't tell in the picture, but they're from lots of different specialties. And it was truly a joyous occasion. People, I think, could feel the importance of what was happening that day. You can see it on the award recipients' faces, as well as in the audience's faces. At some of the faculty behind them, you could just see the joy of it. So I don't have any financial disclosures. And in thinking about sort of why to talk about this, these were kind of the gaps that I had recognized. So we know that organizations are going to thrive most effectively when the workforce is engaged, when they're there because they want to be there, when they feel like they're a part of the work. However, women and physicians from marginalized and excluded groups often don't engage. And some of that's because they're paid less. They less frequently arise to leadership positions. They're less likely to be promoted. They're less likely to achieve high ranks, including professorship. They're more likely to experience professional burnout. And all of this leads to less engagement and higher turnover. And organizations can do something about that by promoting inclusive, equitable cultures that really focus on workplace wellness. So that's what we're going to kind of look at today. We're going to look at the link between equity, individual wellness, organizational potential. We're going to look at some of the bias and discrimination that happens for women in medicine. And hopefully I'm going to get all of you to recognize how important this is and to commit to being part of taking action to try to fix some of these issues. So this is a quote. Gosh, it was about a month ago now. I participated in a 3-day workshop on co-liberation. It was really focused on anti-racism. And this quote really resonated with me and got me into a very different mindset. So Lila Watson was an Aboriginal educator and activist in Australia. And she said, if you've come to help me, you're wasting your time. But if you've come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let's work together. And that really resonated because it got me in a very different mindset. I think I had known that I was coming from a place of privilege, being white in a very white society. And I felt like doing this work, I was helping people. And there is something noble in helping people. But I didn't recognize until this workshop how I'm not always able to bring my authentic self to work. And I just had a conversation yesterday on my drive here with a colleague who was talking about her husband, who is a white man who comes from a very wealthy family, and how he feels like he can't be authentic at work sometimes, that there's all these sort of societal expectations of him. And when you enter into it with that mindset that we're all only going to be our best when we're able to be who we are, that I think really sets the tone for why talking about wellness, why talking about equity is something that should be important to all of us. So you may have seen some of these pictures in social media, things like that, but just the difference between equality, equity, justice, and inclusion. So equality is basically saying that everyone gets the same supports. So everyone gets one nurse in clinic, one PA in the hospital service, whatever it might be, everyone gets exactly the same. That's not going to be sufficient to get us to where we want to get to. We really want to get to the point where everyone gets the support that they need. So we need to recognize that different people are going to need different things. I have this conversation with my stepmother not infrequently because she has 12 grandkids and she treats all of them exactly the same. Well, they all have very different needs. Some of them are in their independent on their own, starting to have children of their own. They need different support than I have a 21-year-old son who's autistic, and he has different needs than my 17-year-old who's going to be heading off to college for aerospace engineering. And she doesn't get that. Fairness in my mind is different than fairness in her mind. In her mind, it's everyone getting exactly the same. In my mind, it's giving people what they need to be able to be successful. So that's really what equity is. Justice takes it one step further, and it's trying to understand, why do people need something different? What are the the barriers that are preventing them from really being able to reach their full potential. And it's trying to work at the systems level to get rid of whatever it is that's causing those inequities. And then a little bit different is inclusion. You often hear DEI in the same sentence, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Inclusion is basically making sure that once you've removed all of those barriers or are in the process of removing those barriers, you're focusing on making sure that everyone is able to participate. So you've got different personality types, introverts, extroverts. Introverts may not actually show up even if you remove the barriers unless they're invited to participate, unless you bring them along with you. So really trying to figure out what is it that's going to help people actually actively engage in the work that you want to do. So this is not a zero-sum game. Again, think of that quote from Lila Watson. We basically are going to win or lose together, and we can all benefit from focusing on this. It's not that we have one pot of resources, and so by giving more to one group, you're going to give less to the other. That is a very narrow mindset. There really are lots of overlapping interests. We know that focusing on equity and well-being do a lot of things. We know that highly functioning organizations where there is equity have improved communication. We all know that when communication works, people tend to do well. We know when communication breaks down, there's lots and lots of problems and issues. We know that organizations where there is a high level of equity and well-being have greater employee retention. Their workers are healthier. They take fewer sick days, especially nowadays with short staffing. That's a big deal. You know, when someone's out sick, it stresses our systems even more. We know that productivity in people who are healthy and well is better. In our current models of care, even though we're starting to shift to quality payments, there's still a lot that is productivity based, and a lot of physician salaries tend to be productivity based. And so there is a financial incentive for this. So lots and lots of reasons that we should be focusing on this. This is a graphic from the National Academy of Medicine's Action Collaborative on Clinician Wellbeing. And there is a real moral reason that we should be talking about this as well. We know that healthcare is stressful. There's lots of issues in healthcare. We know that substance use disorders are higher in physicians. We know that depression and anxiety are higher in physicians. We know that suicide rates are significantly higher in physicians. And I thought this quote encapsulated it nicely. So healthcare professional burnout represents real suffering among people who are dedicated to preventing and relieving the suffering of others. So that's the moral argument, you know, that's what we're here to do. And our systems are creating the opposite of that intention in us. And I'm not sure if your community has been impacted by clinician suicide, but it's devastating when that happens. I had one of my former medical students and residents. I had just seen her the week before she committed suicide. And it really hits home that we need to do better. So there's this huge moral argument that that's why we need to pay attention to it. If I can't sell you on that, there is a business reason too. We do know that burnout is affecting quality of care, safety of care, and overall health system performance. So if you're one of the sort of the bean counters, there is a business reason as well as the moral reason. So in the title of this, I said equity and well-being should be the goal. The quadruple aim, in my opinion, and I'm starting to get some people to sort of come along with this concept. The quadruple aim is incorrect. So the triple aim started, and the triple aim was to have better patient outcomes at lower costs with a higher patient experience. All of that was done on the back of clinicians, without additional resources, without really trying to figure out how do we do that. And burnout started to rise significantly. So improved clinician experience was added in. So when you have a pie and there's 4 pieces, those pieces are competing with each other for resources, for recognition, for importance. It's kind of a no-win situation. So we do know that healthy clinicians have higher patient satisfaction. We do know that healthy clinicians are more efficient and productive. And we're starting to have evidence that shows that healthy clinicians have better patient outcomes. And so my take on this is that if you make well-being and equity the priority, that's how you get to the triple aim. That's really how you get to every other goal. And so every goal that you have, the concept of clinician well-being should enter into those conversations. The other piece that really came to my thinking was that well-being and equity are the same thing. We don't commonly think about them as the same thing, but what we're trying to do in creating well-being is we're trying to create systems. We're trying to help people be the best that they can, to be engaged, to be healthy, to be well, and to be able to reach their individual full potential. Equity, if you think about that slide, that's exactly what we're trying to do with equity. We're trying to remove all of those barriers that prevent someone from being able to reach their goal, being able to reach their full potential. And so in my mind, the goals are exactly the same. The language is a little bit different, but the goals are the same. And so if I had my druthers, as they say, if I could leave all of you today with the mindset that well-being and equity are the same thing and that those should be the goal, that I would say this would be successful. So talking a little bit about the dimensions of well-being, this is a graphic from Tate Shanafelt, who's done a lot of work in this area. In the middle of it all is meaning and work. And then there's all these things that either work for or against you in being able to really connect to that meaning. So workload and job demands, kind of out of control for most people nowadays because of the workforce shortages. But that is one of the driver dimensions. Control and flexibility. Again, the pandemic recently kind of threw that out the window. We've learned that people can work remotely, and in having people work remotely, the separation between work and home has really been blurred. And we don't have a lot of control and flexibility. Work-life integration, social support and community at work. That's also something that the pandemic has changed significantly. We were just talking before Grand Rounds started that trying to get people to come back in person. So we created flexibility by having virtual options for meetings, for conferences, and there's something positive in that. But the negative is you don't have the sense of collective community that we used to have. And so how do we get some of that back? Efficiency and resources, and then culture and values. So all of these things really impact people's well-being, often because they distract us from reconnecting with the meaning of the work that we do. You know, we get so busy that we forget that we get paid to help people every day. That's pretty cool. So this is an article also from the National Academy of Medicine. It was published in 2019, and they looked at gender-based differences in burnout. And they found that women suffer more burnout than men. That being said, the numbers right now are so high that, again, I don't necessarily think there should be a difference. We should really be trying to figure out how do we help every individual thrive. That being said, there are differences in every specialty. They looked at studies from internal medicine, pediatrics, surgery, neurology, primary care, oncology, other medical specialties, and across the board, women had higher rates of burnout than men. So why is that? What are some of the contributing factors? One of the biggest one is gendered expectations. Again, this morning we were talking about sort of societal expectations of mothers and how mothers are still supposed to be the primary caregivers. Men are much more interested now in doing that, but society still expects mothers to be mothers. And so when you finish your day at work, you go home, you have what's called the second shift. If you have a kid that gets sick, very commonly it's the mother who ends up being the one who needs to take off from work. That is very stressful, and that also sometimes inhibits them from being able to progress in their careers. Autonomy and workload, gender bias and discrimination, we'll talk a little bit about that, and gender-based harassment. These are some of the contributing factors to why there is a higher rate of burnout in women than men. I had the opportunity when I was chairing the Board of Regents for the ACP to participate in creation of this paper, which really was looking at gender equity and physician compensation. There was a resolution put forth by the resident and fellow section asking the ACP to address this. And as we started to dig into it, it became much bigger than only compensation. Compensation is a key part of it, but there were so many other factors that impact the compensation. So it ended up being compensation and career advancement. And we're going to walk through what the different pieces are that we came up with. So the other thing that was unique in this paper was we used cases. When we started the work, there were some that said, why are we doing this again? You know, we've already published policy on this, and not sure why we need to update our policy. And the reason was that things had not changed significantly. It was still a huge issue, and that was why we needed to do it. We decided we wanted to use cases to illustrate what some of the issues were. Got pushback from some people, but the cases ended up really showing what's still happening in our society. So this case may resonate with some of you. So Dr. G prides herself on being a highly sought after internal medicine specialist because she provides comprehensive patient-centered care. Many women patients seek care from her because she'll take care of not only their medical problems, but also their pap smears and psychosocial issues. Her quality metrics and patient satisfaction ratings are the highest in her practice. And during her annual review, she was notified that she was going to need to increase her productivity or take a pay cut because her RVUs were lower than those of her colleagues. And she believed that was due to the additional time she spends with her patient. So there's a lot of those sort of societal gendered expectations embedded in this case. We do know that women tend to spend longer with their patients. And in a volume-based system, when you spend more time with your patients, you don't see as many patients, so you don't get paid as much. And that is still coming into play. And it's this huge tension because a lot of women, a lot of physicians in general want to be able to provide that patient-centered care. They want to be able to provide that comprehensive care, but our systems are not yet to to the point that we really know how to pay for quality yet. So the first position that the ACP came out with was that physician compensation should be equitable. And you can see this is a lot of the positions I think are really good internal medicine positions. They're really, really nuanced and complicated. So we didn't just say physician compensation. We said that physician compensation was pay, benefits, clinical and administrative support. Women physicians get less clinical and administrative support. There's lots of evidence that shows this. Clinical schedules, institutional responsibilities. We know that in academics, men get asked to serve on committees that make decisions, important decisions. Women are asked to serve on committees that are more about mentoring and sort of the social mission of medicine. And those are not rewarded as favorably when women and men go up for academic promotion. And so institutional responsibilities was part of compensation. Lab space and support for researchers. Again, evidence that male scientists get more money for the research that they do. They get more lab space, they get more assistants, they get postdocs more commonly than women do. So a lot embedded in physician compensation. So this is a graph with what the pay gap is. And as you can see, it's in all specialties. The only specialty that it doesn't really exist is in radiology. Radiology in general pays based on shift rather than number of films read or things along those lines. But in every other specialty, there is a pay gap, including in internal medicine. This is a paper from the Annals of Internal Medicine that looked at it within internal medicine. It was in 2018. And in general, women made 200,000 annually and men made 250,000. So you can say, 50,000, not a big deal. You think about a 30+ year career, 40-year career, we're talking $1.5, $2 million over the course of someone's career. So that is actually a really big difference. A lot of it is what that starting salary is, and whether or not women negotiate well or not. And it really shouldn't be based on someone's negotiating skills. People should get paid for whatever the work is that they're doing. So again, there is a salary difference coming in and moving forward. So it's not only in medicine. This is something that happens throughout society. And this is from the Institute for Women's Policy Research. They have a calculator where they look at all different things like educational level attained in the state by women and men, policies related to things like healthcare. They look at maternal mortality. They look at the percentage of single parents, and are those single parents women or men. I'm not a math person, so I don't really know how some of these calculators work, but you plug it in and it'll basically tell you based on some of these policies when the wage gap might close. And in Tennessee, the wage gap might close in 2057. In Illinois, we're actually worse, 2065. So we still have a long way to go. So we'll shift gears and talk about another case. So Dr. W, she's a third-year resident. She's looking at career options after residency. She wants to go back to her hometown and serve the underserved where she was raised. She knows that there's not a lot of African-American physician role models and is really excited about this opportunity to go home and to be that role model. After discussing her contract with a colleague who's also interested in working for the same clinic, same identical experience, same position descriptions. She is made aware that her contract offer is 30% less than that of her male colleague. Their gender was the only difference. So the second position that the ACP came up with, on the surface sounds simple, but in reality is a little more complicated. But ACP supports transparency and routine assessment of equity of physician compensation arrangements by all organizations that employ physicians. And this, it shouldn't be as hard as it is, but it's hard. People don't like to talk about money. People don't like to talk about inequities. Again, realized that I come from a position of privilege, and I had shown up for our Department of Medicine's promotion and tenure committee meeting. And at the time, to serve on our P&T committee, you had to be full professor or you had to be a division chief. And at the time, we only had 2 women in the department who were full professors. And the other woman didn't happen to be there at this one meeting. And I walked into the meeting and saw this room of men. And I still don't know why I did it, but I said, "Am I allowed to be here?" And they said, "Of course, why?" And I said, "This looks like it's a male only meeting." And after some nervous energy, we kind of moved on, had the meeting. I told my husband later and he said, "Why did you do that?" He said, "You're going to get fired." And I'm like, "What are they going to do? Fire me? I'm the only woman." I think I would have a fair case to say there was gender discrimination if they fired me based on that. Didn't think about it. About a month later, I got called into my chair's office and he said, "I just wanted to thank you for making that comment at the P&T committee meeting because it got me to thinking, why is Sue the only woman here?" And so he dug into our data, and not surprising to me, women in our department got promoted at a much slower rate than men, very commonly stopping at the associate professor level, very infrequently making it to the professor level. And he said, that also got me to thinking about, I wonder if women get paid less. And he looked, and sure enough, we had some significant equity issues within the Department of Medicine. And he has put into place a process. It's a multi-year process because funding, it's challenging. Funding comes from lots of different places to fund the mission. And you can't just all of a sudden pay everyone exactly the same. You got to have the finances to do it. But he was able to put into place a process where he now routinely looks at equity. So it shouldn't be as hard as it is, but it is. So the third position is related to family medical leave. And the ACP said that they supported policies that provided a minimum of 6 months or 6 weeks of paid leave and call for legislative action to really advance this goal. This was very contentious. A lot of people wanted to have the ACP come out with more than 6 weeks, but 6 weeks was where we settled at. So we are the only industrialized nation that does not guarantee paid parental leave. You can see all of these other countries have figured it out. Some of them allow years worth of paid parental leave. They prioritize that so much. In the United States, we're especially now, we're in a very difficult political climate, and state rights are superseding centralized goals very commonly. And so most of this has been left up to states. And you can see this was 2021. I looked to see if they had updated it with 2022 information, and they hadn't. This came out of the Kaiser Family Foundation. And so you can see the states that have enacted paid leave. On the positive side, I've been doing this talk for a few years now. It's actually doubled the number of states. So it is gaining some traction, but long way to go. And both Illinois and Tennessee currently do not have paid leave laws. I put that in there because if this is something that is important to you as an individual, you can be part of the group of citizens that works to try to get this to happen at the Tennessee level. That is really how it's happened in all of those other states. It's been from a group of people who really called their legislatures to task on it. The fourth position is that we really want people to have the skills necessary to be able to advance in their careers. So providing programs in leadership development, negotiation, and career development. And again, this is for all physicians, not only for women. There is some emerging evidence that having separate programs for women compared to men doesn't actually accomplish what we thought it would. It tends to keep people in separate groups rather than learning and growing together. And a lot of times men feel that there aren't programs specifically for men. And so why should there be separate programs for women? So the statement really is to really try to give everyone the skills necessary to succeed. And this is important because despite progress being made, it's really, really slow progress. These are from two separate reports from the AAMC. One was the 2003-2004 data, and then the second is the 2018-2019. And again, we are making progress. In 2003-2004, 10% of our medical school deans were women. 10% of our department chairs were women. 14% of full professors were women. In 2018-2019, you can see that despite women making up 51% of medical school applicants, now matriculation is right around 50-50. Even by the end of medical school, that's dropped to 48%. So we're losing women medical students at a greater rate than male medical students. That drops off even more in residency. We're down to 46% of residents are women. So again, we're losing more of our women workforce. 41% of faculty in academic medicine are women. That may not be a drop off. It may be that women aren't choosing to go into academics, but 41% of our women, of our faculty in academic medicine are women. And then you can look at the decision makers where a lot of the power is. 29% of our division chiefs are women, 25% of our full professors, 34% of senior associate deans, and then our full deans has gone from 10% to 18%. So that's progress, but it's still low. 10% of our department chairs in 2004 were women. Now 18% of our department chairs are women. So progress, but slow progress. So why is that? Well, some of it is we know that to get high level positions, to get dean level positions, you often need to advance to the highest rank. And you can see on this slide that women do not get promoted to professorship as commonly as men. So in internal medicine, 21% of internal medicine faculty, or 21% of men achieve the rank of full professorship, and women, it's 8%. So big difference. And there's no specialty that's doing this any better. They all are problematic. This was a busy slide, so I tried to call out the internal medicine piece. So what also feeds into promotion is speaking opportunities. And in internal medicine grand rounds, women made up of intramural speakers, 23% of grand round speakers, and in invited speakers, extramural speakers, 20%. This is something that you can actually easily pay attention to. I don't know if you all track this. We started tracking this at SIU, and like most places, we had way more men than women speakers. We had way more white speakers than Black speakers, than Asian speakers, than Latinx speakers. And so we started tracking it and reporting it, and simply tracking it and reporting it, not doing anything else, not saying you have to have a certain percentage. The numbers went up significantly. And we have divisions that get to do invited speakers, and they get their data too, and they get to see how they're doing compared to other divisions. And we tend to be competitive. And if we see other people doing better than us, it often stimulates us to think differently. So Grand Round speakers, something to pay attention to. Publications are also a piece that feeds into promotion, and women tend to have less papers published, fewer papers published. This is an older study from 2006, and it showed that very uncommonly women were first author or senior authors. I'll take the Annals of Internal Medicine. In 2004, 30% of the papers published had a woman as a first author, and 13% had women as a senior author. There was a more recent study that, again, looked at this as part of some of that glass ceiling, and it looked at JAMA, Lancet, and New England Journal of Medicine, and still huge opportunities for improvement. In JAMA, the percentage was 35% of women as first authors. Lancet, it was right around 30%. New England Journal of Medicine, only 16% of the first authors were women. And significant authors, they defined as first, second, or senior authors. And you can see the numbers there pretty similar. So who makes decisions about what gets published? It's the editorial boards, it's the reviewers, and that goes to the editorial boards. And there's not a lot of women journal editors and not a lot of women on editorial boards. So something that journals should be paying attention to. This is a more recent study looking at the representation of women among editors in journals. And it varied a lot by specialty. And there's still the bottom ones: allergy, anesthesiology, ophthalmology, dentistry, and psychiatry. Of those journals, they've never had a woman editor. So again, something to pay attention to. Who has some of the oversight for who serves as editors and on editorial boards? It's boards, boards of trustees, boards of directors, and you can see these are some of our major medical organizations. And this has changed dramatically in the 3 to 4 years that I've been doing this presentation. It really has. So the ACP now has 61% of the members of the Board of Regents are women. The American College of Surgeons, it's 45%. ACOG, when 3 years ago, they only had 30% of their board were women. And now that's up to 70%, much more representative of what this specialty is. The AMA still has a little ways to go. 36% of its board of trustees are women. And then the bottom one is the Osteopathic Association. They're at 38%. So all of those things are important because those are contributors to someone being able to be promoted. So the fifth position is to provide regular and recurring implicit bias training. And if you identify implicit bias, which you will, there should be policies and procedures to try to address why that's happening. And implicit bias is not bad. I have 56 years of lived experience. Those experiences factor into how I make decisions and how I interpret situations. And Most of it is on an unconscious level, and you need to know what your biases are in order to figure out how to mitigate them if you think that you want to mitigate them. So implicit bias is defined as the attitudes, stereotypes, and beliefs that affect how we treat others. And it often runs contrary to our stated beliefs. So we can say that we believe in equity and truly believe it, but then unintentionally behave in ways that are discriminatory. And I don't know if any of you have taken any of these implicit bias tests. If you haven't, it's a good exercise. They're free. And they have them in all sorts of areas: race, gender, disability, whether or not you value attractiveness over unattractiveness, lots of things. And when I first took mine, it was probably about 10 years ago, and I was devastated. I had a huge bias that men should be in careers and women should be at home. And that was not what my lived experience at that point was. My husband at that point was a stay-at-home dad, and I was the breadwinner of the household. And I'm like, how could this be? And so I spent a lot of time trying to figure out why that was and what to do about it. And I was raised in a very traditional family. My father was an OBGYN. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, and all of our family friends, it was the exact same setup. And that over the years is what really influenced why I thought that way, even if it wasn't the way that I wanted to think. And so I had to really pay attention to how that was showing up in conversations with students I was mentoring, with my chair when I was having conversations with him. And I'm happy to say, over the past decade, I have now gotten to the point that I now have a slight association of females with careers and men with family. So something that it is important to know what your biases are, because if it is contrary to what your stated beliefs are and what you truly believe, you have to do the work to try to figure out how to mitigate that. These things come up all the time. Again, these are some of the things that have come up that have fed into why I had that previous bias. A lot of these things are microaggressions that just sort of get inside of us. Children need their mother. You know, when my husband decided to stay at home, when my son was diagnosed with autism, and we were no longer able to balance trying to get him to his PT, OT, speech therapy, and it was just wreaking havoc on our lives, we knew one of us needed to stay home, and he was willing to do that. My patients, my colleagues were like, oh, don't you feel guilty? You know, shouldn't you be there with Thomas instead of Kevin? And they were well intended, but again, that gets inside of you. Sounds good, honey. Just a couple of years ago, it was literally the weekend before the pandemic shutdown, I was giving a talk, an international talk. And at the end, somebody in their questioning said, that was a great presentation, honey, and then went on to ask their question. And it really causes you to question, should I be at the podium? You know, if they think that lowly of me, was I that ineffective that they view me as a honey? So women are underrepresented in awards. This was a study by Julie Silver looking at physical medicine and rehab, and looked at the number of national awards given based on gender. And she looked at from 1990 to 2016, and overall it was right around 20%. When they dug deeper, they had actually had early in the 2000s some efforts to pay attention to this. And so they wanted to see if those efforts had worked. And early on, they did work. It went up a little bit. but then they stopped paying attention to it and they dropped back down. And I think I put this in here to demonstrate that you need policies, you need procedures that consistently keep this on the radar. Otherwise, behavior tends to drift back to where it was. This slide is from an article that you all may be familiar with from JAMA Internal Medicine that was looking at equity issues related to alpha, omega, alpha. And there were no gender-based differences, but there were huge racial differences. So they looked at the number of applicants in the match who had AOA listed. And 42% of the AOA applicants were women. But looking at race, 71% of AOA was white, 17% Asian, only 3%, 2.8% Hispanic, and only 0.7% Black. And this really, really sort of opened up the eyes to the significant systemic issues that are really impacting our learners from marginalized and excluded communities. And the AOA is working on addressing this. There have been many medical schools that have pulled out of, they don't do AOA now because they feel like they need to do the foundational work to try to figure out what in their systems are creating these inequities. And rather than to continue perpetuating those inequities, they've done away with AOA until they're able to feel confident that they can do it in a more equitable, unbiased way. Let's see, how am I doing on time? The sixth position is, again, I call this an internal medicine position because it's really, really complicated. Take steps to increase the number of women in practice, faculty, and leadership positions, and to structure equal access to those opportunities. And so some of the suggested ways were through mentorship and sponsorship, through coaching, through developing flexible career paths, requiring inclusion of females as job candidates and on search committees. We know that that's one way that we can start to address some of this, and to ensure diversity on all committees, councils, and boards, and to have accountability for really trying to reach these metrics. The seventh position is really to study the impacts that these inequities have on us. And the eighth position is to oppose harassment, discrimination, and retaliation. So I was asked to also include some things that individuals can do. All of those other things really were what organizations can do, what departments can do. But what can you do individually? So this comes from the Annals of Internal Medicine's Fresh Look blog, which is written by early career physicians. And they had one on advancing the careers of women. And so the things that you can do are you can become an advocate. You as physicians have incredible power. You have incredible privilege, and you can use that for change. If there's something that excites you, that motivates you, become an advocate for that. You know, there's so many different things that this could be related to. It could be to the gender pay gap. It could be to getting Tennessee to become a state that provides paid leave. It could be for making sure that there is gender representation on committees, things like that. But find something that you believe in and you become part of the change. Amplify. So amplify the accomplishments of women. Give credit when it's due. Speaking of AOA, we at SIU had an issue. We had gender-based issues, we had race-based issues, and we strategized some of it was our process, but we made sure that there were women and people from marginalized and excluded communities who showed up for the meeting when we selected the candidates, and we spaced ourselves around the room so that we could amplify each other when someone spoke up for a women candidate, for a candidate who was from a marginalized and excluded group. And we basically said, I agree with what Dr. Panda just said. I think that candidate X would be an outstanding AOA member. I agree with Dr. Shaw and Dr. Panda that candidate would be a great addition to AOA. And so we amplified what the other people said. So that's something that can easily be done. Pay attention. It's not uncommon that a woman will bring up an idea and it gets glossed over. And then a couple minutes later, a man will say the same thing and it becomes a great idea. So if you recognize that happening, you say, I agree, that's a great idea. It sounds like you and Dr. Panda are on the same page. So you bring them back into the conversation and give them credit for that. Third thing is celebrate, honor, and support. So be the one that nominates women for recognition. Inclusion, think of that slide of equity, liberation, inclusion, and what we're trying to do. So make sure that people are invited in. Pay attention to people who are sitting on the outside, invite them to come sit at the table. Pay attention to what's happening in some of the areas where some of the differences may not be so visible. Our LGBTQ community, our community of people who may have disabilities, try to get them to be able to be engaged as well. Offer to help write letters of support, learn how to write a letter that overcomes gendered language. We can talk about that later if you want. Teach negotiation skills, anything that you can do to help mitigate some of these barriers. Measure. I don't know if any of the folks in the audience are people who have control of institutional policies, deans, chairs, chiefs. Make sure you track equity. Make sure you're looking at career advancement. Make sure you're looking at salaries. Mentorship is key. Respect and share and solicit. This is a slide from one of my former students, Michael Sinha. He is a huge advocate for equity in medicine, and he published this list of things that he said he for she's, but really I think anyone can do these things. But a couple of things that we haven't specifically addressed is learn how to call out inappropriate behavior when it happens so that you have the confidence and the skill set to do that in a non-confrontational way, in a more productive way, but take responsibility for that. We haven't talked about number 9, decline to participate on all male panels or panels that don't have racial diversity on them. I now, if I'm asked to be on a panel, I'll ask who the other participants are and try to make sure that there are opportunities to help to advance the careers of people who may not otherwise have those opportunities. And always train yourself to ask, is there a qualified woman candidate for this role, for this award, for this committee? Is there a qualified person from an underrepresented background who may benefit from that recognition from serving on that committee? This is something that organizations can do. This came from a group called the Women of Impact, and organizations can look at this and try to make sure that you are doing the things that are necessary to advance workplace equity. So I'm going to leave you with one of my favorite quotes. This is part of what motivates me. Our work should equip the next generation of women to outdo us in every field. This is the legacy we'll leave behind. And I want to leave you with the notion that you're part of making things better. You're part of the change. And so commitment is really what is going to turn promise into reality. And Abraham Lincoln, I don't know how he sits in Tennessee, but he is from Springfield, Illinois. So I put that question or that quote in there for you. And so with that, I don't know if we have time left for some questions or comments. One or two.
Thank you so much. Very eye-opening. One of the slides that really resonated with me
was the slide and the comments you made about how a lot of times when you walk into a room as a female physician, the patient may think that you're a nurse or make some sort of comment. And I really struggle because a lot of our patients, I think their intentions are very pure and they don't mean things in a certain type of way, but it also leaves you at the end of the day feeling a little bit underwhelmed and also frustrated because the work that you put in isn't always recognized. So if you have any advice on kind of how to handle that type of comment, what may be appropriate to say to the patient, and also not to diminish the rapport that you've created with the patient as well. That's kind of a question that I had and I still struggle with.
Yeah, and that's really, really common. I've learned that intention is important, but impact is just as important, if not more important. And the fact that happens over and over again, that does impact our self-confidence, that does impact our, as our self-confidence goes down, we're less likely to try to go for high-level positions. It's really complicated. And so it does need to be addressed. And a lot of times in the moment, you just let it slide because you don't know how to address it. And so one of the things that we do maybe once a year or so at SIU is we do a workshop where we talk about some of these challenging situations and we practice. So how would you respond? So then those words are going to be much more accessible. And so with something like that, you can say, yeah, nurses are a really, really important part of our clinical care teams, and I respect them so highly. I just wanted to make sure that you knew that I'm not the nurse. I'm the physician. My training is very different. I'm the physician. So something along those lines. And then the patient is like, oh yeah, you are the physician. And, you know, again, most of the time they don't intend anything negative. And there's lots of different scenarios that you can kind of practice it, having those words ready. But that's one that I've learned to say is, yeah, nurses are a really, really important part of our clinical care team. And I'm glad that you respect them the way that I do. I just wanted to make sure you knew that I actually wasn't a nurse. I'm a physician. My training was very different, and I'm your doctor.
Radhika, just a minute. Dr. Haynes, our dean, had to leave, but he sent me a text message to say thank you for being here. And he wanted everybody in the audience to also in keeping with Dr. Hingel's conversation about engaging, to think about joining the medical society. And I think Dr. Menyam now is going to be in the leadership role in the medical society also, or already has a leadership role. That's a great way to really see what they're doing to advance some of the advocacy issues that impact everybody, but especially the women. And also to think about, we have a lot of learners in the audience today, Dr. Hingel, and one thing that we think about, we don't have the time for this. You're asking us to engage, and how do we do this? We'll do this after residency is over or medical school is over. But I think if we think and make this a priority to approach and see how we can help you be part of that. So keep that in mind. If anybody's interested, Dr. Haynes is available. I'm available. Any of the leadership here is available. But I don't know if you had something to say about how can we engage the learners at a very young time in their careers to be part of this change.
Yeah, I think, so my dad was an OBGYN, I mentioned that. He had a traditional private practice. That's what medicine was to me, was the doctor-patient relationship. And, wherever we went, oh, Dr. Thompson, you delivered my baby. She's now 21. And like, to me, that's what a doctor was. And during medical school and residency, when I complained about things, I had 2 different mentors who said, you can be part of trying to change that, working for that change. And that was how I ended up getting involved with the American College of Physicians, our medical societies, other organized medicine, because I didn't want to just complain. And one of the things that really stuck with me that one of my mentors said was always think, if not me, then who? Why is it someone else's responsibility to fix this? Why shouldn't I be part of it? And so I learned how to engage in organized medicine and to fit that in with my life, with my goals. Sometimes it's more challenging than others, but it's been part of my professional career, my professional identity, and other parts of, a lot of things in life are decisions and priorities. And some of the other aspects of my life and my career may not be as well developed because I made the decision to incorporate advocacy as part of my career journey. Hello, hi, I'm Sue.
Harish Maniam, nice to meet you.
Nice to
Really
meet you.
Great talk.
Thank you.
So I'm the division chief of cardiology. And so this is great insight. We have actually one of our faculty who's not here today, her name is Megan Coilwright. She's really interested in the topics that you described. And I think we have